For 1,000 years, the silverleaf forest has stood watch, its ancient trees like silent guardians reaching for the heavens. Deep within its heart, where golden sunbeams pierce the canopy, lives Naram. He is the last of the Sylvan, the forest spirits who once protected the delicate balance between nature and humankind. Naram isn't human, though he looks like one. His skin has the texture of bark, marked with patterns that glow faintly in the dark. His eyes, the color of autumn leaves, can see through shadows and across great distances. But his most remarkable gift is his bond with the forest itself. He feels its pain, hears its whispers, and when necessary, commands its very elements. 2 centuries have passed since the Great Burning. Human armies, armed with torches and axes, swept through this sacred wood, hunting the Sylvan to near extinction. They called the forest guardians demons, fearing what they could not understand. Naram was the sole survivor, but the memory of his family's slaughter is forever seared into his soul. Since that day, a deep-seated hatred for humanity has taken root in his heart, a poisonous vine strangling every other emotion. "They are destroyers," he often whispers to the trees on his daily patrols. "They take without giving, kill without remorse. This world would finally heal if they simply vanished from it." The ancient trees creak in solemn agreement, a symphony only he can comprehend. His existence is a solitary one. He tends to wounded animals, guides lost creatures back to their homes, and maintains the powerful enchantments along the eastern border of his territory. These spells disorient any human who dares to venture too close, and for centuries they have served him well, preserving his isolated peace. Then came the night the sky burned. Fierce red flames painted the horizon beyond his forest, and the wind carried the distant sound of screams. Naram climbed the tallest oak to watch, a cold detachment settling over him as another human village was consumed by fire. "Their own violence returns to them," he muttered, feeling not a shred of sympathy. Yet a strange unease coiled in his chest, compelling him to keep watching long into the night. As dawn broke, the air was thick with the scent of smoke and something else, something unexpected. A human child had crossed his boundary. This should have been impossible. Had his enchantments weakened? Fury surged through him. Naram began tracking the intruder, his keen eyes following the trail of broken twigs and disturbed earth until he found her. There, sleeping beneath a sprawling willow tree, was a small girl, no older than 8. The edges of her dress were singed, her face smudged with soot, and clean tracks marked where tears had streamed down her dirty cheeks. Even in sleep, she clutched a crude wooden doll tightly in her hand. The sight stirred something dormant within Naram, a flicker of a long-lost memory. He remembered sylvan children, his own kind, playing joyfully beneath these very same trees so long ago. The anger in his heart wavered, replaced by a feeling he couldn't name. "Wake, human child," he commanded, his voice raspy, like stones grinding together. The girl's eyes fluttered open. They were the deepest blue, the color of the forest's hidden pools. She showed no fear, only a profound sadness that seemed too heavy for one so small. "Are you the forest spirit?" she asked, her voice a soft whisper. Naram recoiled, surprised by her question. "How do you know of such things?" "My mother told me stories," the girl replied, sitting up and hugging her doll. "She said if I was ever lost in the Silverleaf, I should look for the guardian with eyes like autumn." She looked at him with a heartbreaking innocence. "I'm Layla. My village. It's gone. The men with black banners came in the night." Against his better judgment, curiosity began to replace Naram's anger. "What men? Why did they burn your home?" Layla's voice trembled. "They were looking for something they thought was hidden in our village. My mother told me to run, to hide in the forest while she distracted them." She promised she would find me, but—" Fresh tears welled in her blue eyes, and she couldn't finish. Every instinct screamed at Naram to send her away. He should guide her to the nearest human settlement and wash his hands of her. It was the safe, logical thing to do. But her grief, so raw and pure, resonated with his own ancient buried pain. He saw his own loss reflected in her small, tear-streaked face. "You cannot stay here," he said, his voice firm, trying to cling to his centuries of resolve. "This forest is not a place for humans." "Please," Layla whispered, her small voice pleading. "Just until tomorrow. My mother knows the safe paths through the Silverleaf. If she escaped, this is where she'll look for me. I know she will." The morning light, dappled and soft, filtered through the forest canopy as Layla awoke. Beside her, a small, thoughtful arrangement of forest berries and clean water held in a leaf cup waited. From the deep shadows of a massive oak, Naram watched. He was still wrestling with the impulse that had led him to provide for the human child. "Thank you," Layla's voice, small but clear, cut through the morning stillness. She was looking directly at his hiding place. Her perception was unsettling. Humans rarely sensed his presence unless he allowed it. With a sigh that rustled the leaves around him, Naram emerged. His tall, slender form moved with the fluid grace of wind through branches, a stark contrast to the world of men. "You must leave today," he stated, his voice flat and devoid of warmth. "I will guide you to the western path. From there, you are on your own." Layla didn't argue. She simply ate the berries, slowly, savoring each one as if it were a precious gem. "These taste like the ones my mother and I gathered last summer," she said quietly. "She knows all about plants and healing. That's why the villagers always protected us, especially when the strangers started asking questions." The word pricked Naram's ancient stillness. "What strangers?" he asked, his curiosity warring with his resolution to remain detached. "Men in dark clothing," Layla replied, her small fingers tracing patterns in the dirt. "They wore silver pendants like coiled snakes. They came 3 times before the burning. They kept asking about the forest guardian and something they called the heart crystal. My mother always sent me away to hide when they came." She paused, her voice barely a whisper. "She told me our family has protected a secret for generations." The words sent a jolt, cold and sharp, through Naram. The heart crystal. The sacred stone that had once amplified the Sylvan connection to the forest, the very source of their power, had been lost centuries ago during the Great Burning. He had long believed it was destroyed forever. "Your mother, she spoke of this crystal?" He moved closer, kneeling beside her, his earlier coldness forgotten, replaced by an urgent intensity. Layla looked up, a flicker of hope brightening her tired eyes. "She wears it. It's on a chain around her neck. Sometimes it glows green, especially when we get close to the forest edge." She leaned forward slightly. "If I find her, you could ask her about it." Naram's mind raced. Centuries of solitude shattered in an instant. A human carrying the heart crystal. It explained so much. The slow weakening of the forest over recent decades, the steady diminishing of his own powers. If he could recover it, he could restore balance to the Silverleaf, his home. And perhaps, just perhaps, it could reveal if any other Sylvan had survived the purge. "I will help you search for your mother," he said, the words surprising even himself as they left his lips. "But we must be cautious. If the men who burned your village seek the crystal, they will not stop hunting for it, or for her." For the first time since he'd found her, Layla smiled. It was a small, fragile thing, yet it somehow pierced through centuries of Naram's hardened defenses. "Then we'll be careful together." The days that followed wove them into an unlikely partnership. the ancient guardian and the lost child. Naram, the silent master of the woods, taught Layla how to move like a shadow, to distinguish the healing herbs from the poisonous ones, and how to listen to the whispers carried on the wind. In return, Layla, with her endless, innocent questions, forced him to see the world beyond his grief. She chipped away at the stone wall he had built around his heart. One evening, as they sat beside the flickering warmth of a small, smokeless fire, she asked, "Why do your markings glow at night?" He looked down at the swirling patterns on his arms, luminous in the twilight. "They reflect the life energy of the forest," he explained, his voice softer than usual. "All Sylvan carried these patterns. They tell our lineage, our story, our connection to the elements." Layla's eyes widened in wonder. "Like a family tree. But on your skin," she mused. "That's beautiful." Her simple acceptance, so free from fear or judgment, continued to bewilder him. The child looked at him and saw not a monster, not a demon of the woods as others had, but a person with a history, with pain. On the 7th day of their journey, their hope was rewarded. Caught on a thorny bush near the eastern stream, a scrap of fabric fluttered in the breeze. "This is hers!" Layla exclaimed, her voice trembling as she clutched the small piece of cloth. "Her favorite shawl had this pattern. I know it." Naram knelt, his keen eyes scanning the ground. He saw what human eyes would miss entirely: the subtle signs of passage. Broken twigs bent in a specific direction, grass pressed down just so. "Someone came this way," he confirmed, 3 or 4 days ago. They were moving quickly, but trying to stay hidden. A brilliant, desperate hope flared in Layla's expression. "She's alive! She must be! We have to find her!" But as twilight began to bleed across the sky, painting the clouds in shades of orange and purple, Naram sensed something else. A disturbance in the forest's energy. Unwelcome presences, heavy and menacing, entering his domain. "We must seek shelter," he said, his voice dropping to an urgent whisper. "Others have crossed the boundary." He led her away from the stream, their pace quickening, until they reached a hidden grotto concealed behind a shimmering waterfall. It was one of his most secure sanctuaries. There, in the dim blue light that filtered through the cascading water, Layla's brave facade finally crumbled. "I'm scared," she admitted, her small body huddled against the cold cave wall. "What if we can't find her? What if those men found her first?" Naram hesitated. Then he did something he hadn't done since the days before the Great Burning, before his world turned to ash. He reached out and placed a gentle hand on a human's shoulder. The contact felt foreign, yet strangely right. "Your mother survived the burning of your village," he said, his voice a low rumble. "She found her way into the deepest parts of the Silverleaf, a place where most humans fear to tread. She is strong and resourceful, like you." Layla looked up at him, tears glistening in her eyes like captured stars. "You really think so?" "I do." The realization struck him then, with the force of a physical blow. He genuinely cared about this child's suffering. He, who had sworn off all connection to the mortal world, felt a fierce, protective urge for this small human. It was a feeling he would have believed impossible just days ago. That night, as Layla slept, curled beside the small fire he'd made, Naram stepped outside the grotto. He stood beneath the ancient trees and communed with the forest. The whispering leaves and groaning branches shared visions with him. 8 men, armed with steel and fire, methodically searching the southern woods, their silver pendants glinting in the torchlight. "Protect the child," he whispered into the living heart of the woods. "Guide the mother to us, if she still walks among your paths." For the first time in centuries, Naram felt true fear. It wasn't for himself, but for the small, sleeping girl who had somehow slipped past his hatred and awakened something he thought long dead. compassion. He returned to the cave as the fire dwindled to glowing embers. Layla stirred, murmuring her mother's name in her sleep. Naram settled beside her, a silent sentinel. His amber eyes, reflecting the dying coals, kept watch in the darkness. Whatever hunted them would soon discover that the last Sylvan guardian had not forgotten how to fight for those under his protection. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this story, please consider liking the video and subscribing to the channel for more tales from realms of fantasy and adventure. We'll see you in the next chapter. The journey to the First Oak demanded every ounce of Naram's forest craft. He led Serena and Layla through hidden paths that seemed to vanish behind them, across stepping stones that sank into the water moments after they crossed, and through dense thickets that parted only for his touch. "The forest obeys you," Serena said in awe, watching as vines twisted back into place after they passed. Naram's voice was calm, almost a whisper of the wind itself. "We are not separate beings. The Sylvan and the forest are just different expressions of the same life force." Despite the danger they were in, young Layla's eyes were wide with wonder. "Is that why you don't leave? Even when you were all alone? Because you're part of it?" Naram had never really thought of his solitude that way. "Perhaps," he mused, "to leave would be to sever a part of myself." By midday, they reached a ravine far too wide to cross. Below, a river churned with furious white rapids. Naram knelt, pressing his palm against the rough bark of an ancient cedar. He closed his eyes, a silent communion passing between him and the tree. A moment later, a deep groan echoed through the forest as the massive tree began to bend, its upper trunk stretching across the chasm to form a living bridge. "Quickly," he urged them. "The tree cannot hold this for long." Halfway across, Layla gasped and pointed downstream. "Look!" Through the leaves, they saw them, men in dark clothing wading through the river, silver pendants gleaming at their throats. Leading them was a tall, menacing figure. Even from a distance, his presence radiated malice. He had a scarred face and eyes as cold as winter frost. Serena's voice was tight with fear as she whispered his name. "Malik, the huntmaster of the Ashen Hand." As they scrambled the rest of the way across, she explained, "He tracked my mother for years. He believes the crystal is his birthright, stolen from his ancestors during the Great Burning." Naram's response was a low growl. "A lie. The heart crystal was never in human hands until Ilara gave it to your family." Just as they reached the other side, the cedar bridge straightened with a shudder, but it was too late. A horn blast, sharp and commanding, echoed through the trees. "They've seen us," Serena said, her face pale. "Malik will drive his men without rest now." Layla, with a child's fierce bravery, brandished a stick she'd picked up. "Then we fight." A faint smile touched Naram's lips. The girl had a courage that reminded him of Ilara. "Not yet, brave one," he said gently. "First, we need the advantage of place." He led them onward, toward a limestone outcropping that rose from the forest floor like the bones of an ancient giant. He knew the caves within its honeycomb interior, a labyrinth known only to the forest guardians. As sunset painted the sky in fiery colors, they slipped inside the caves. Naram guided them deep within, to a central grotto where a spring bubbled up from the earth. The water glowed with a faint, ethereal blue light. "We'll rest here," he announced. "The waters will mask the crystal's energy for a little while." Layla, completely exhausted, fell asleep almost immediately. Naram and Serena sat by the glowing spring, speaking in hushed voices. "Tell me about your family," Naram asked, his gaze fixed on the water. "About this lineage that might connect us." Serena trailed her fingers through the spring, her motions creating patterns that mimicked the markings on Naram's own skin. "The stories say Ilara knew she was carrying a child when she gave up the crystal. She told my ancestor, Mira, that the child would be of two worlds, a bridge of what was sundered. Amira promised to protect both the crystal and Alara's child. And did this child, Naram's voice was barely a whisper, show any sylvan traits? Some, Serena confirmed. The ability to sense the forest's moods. A strange connection with plants and animals. And this, she pushed back her sleeve, revealing a faint pattern on her inner wrist, like the delicate rings of a tree. All women in our line are born with this mark. It gets clearer when we're near the silver leaf. Naram hesitated, then reached out, his fingers hovering just above her skin. May I? Serena nodded. The moment his fingertips made contact, the pattern on her wrist glowed softly, responding to his touch just as sylvan markings would. It's true, he whispered, overwhelmed by a feeling he hadn't known in centuries. After all this time, I am not alone. Their moment was shattered by a distant sound, metal scraping on stone. The hunters had found the cave entrance. We have to wake Layla, Serena said, but Naram stopped her. There's another way out across an underground lake. I can guide you, but first, he looked at her with an urgent intensity. The crystal belongs in the heart of the forest. If anything happens to me, you must take it to the first oak. Place it in the hollow at its center. Nothing will happen to you, Serena insisted. We go together. Naram shook his head, his eyes glancing at the sleeping child. Someone has to slow them down. Promise me you'll protect her. She is the future I never dared to imagine. Before Serena could argue, a new sound made them both freeze. Footsteps approaching their chamber. They turned, expecting hunters, but saw a lone figure silhouetted against the grotto's blue light. The tall man stepped forward, revealing the scarred face of the huntmaster. Malik had found another way in. The legendary Sylvan Guardian, Malik said, his voice deceptively soft, yet filled with cold purpose. And the thief who carries what is rightfully mine. Naram instinctively moved in front of Serena and Layla. The crystal belongs to no human, especially not you. Malik's lips twisted into a cruel smile. I am more than human creature. My blood carries the legacy of those wise enough to take power when it was offered. From beneath his cloak, he drew a blade that shimmered with an unnatural light. Did you really think Alara was the only one who crossed the boundaries between our kinds? The implication sent a chill through Naram's veins. Impossible. While your kind preached harmony, Malik sneered, some humans sought greater rewards. My ancestors aligned with Sylvan who understood true power. They were destroyed in the Great Burning, but not before passing on certain gifts. To prove his point, Malik raised his free hand, and the glowing water of the spring rose up, twisting into shapes that mimicked Naram's own elemental control. Corrupted magic, Naram growled. Stolen, not earned. Effective nonetheless, Malik replied, his eyes locking onto Serena and the crystal. That relic has been my family's birthright for generations. You've kept it from us long enough. The commotion woke Layla. Mother! She whimpered, her eyes wide with fear. That tiny moment of distraction was all Malik needed. He lunged, his blade slashing toward Serena with inhuman speed. Naram threw himself in the way, the weapon slicing deep into his shoulder. Pain flared through him, but he didn't falter. He called upon his power, and thick roots erupted from the stone floor, snaking around Malik's legs. The hunter snarled, hacking at the living restraints. Run! Naram yelled at Serena. Take Layla and go! Serena hesitated for only a second, then grabbed her daughter's hand and fled toward the passage to the underground lake. The cave trembled. Roots and vines burst from every crack, and the luminous water surged into a protective wall. Malik fought back with the unnatural strength of his corrupted blood, his blade cutting through Naram's defenses as quickly as they appeared. "You can't win, Guardian. Your kind is dying. My order will reshape this world without your weakness." Their battle raged through the caverns. Naram was bleeding from multiple wounds, but he fought on, knowing every moment he held Malik back was a moment gained for Serena and Layla. As dawn approached, he knew what he had to do. Summoning the last of his strength, he drove Malik back toward the cave entrance where the other hunters waited. Then, with one final, desperate surge of power, he brought the very caves down upon them. The last thing Naram saw before darkness took him was Malik's face, twisted in rage as tons of limestone buried them both. As the first rays of morning light pierced through the canopy of ancient trees, Serena and Layla scrambled from the darkness of the underground passage. Behind them, a deep, earth-shaking rumble confirmed their fears. The cave had collapsed. Layla spun around, her young face a mask of horror. "Naram, we have to go back. We have to help him." Serena pulled her daughter into a tight embrace, her own heart breaking as she fought back tears. "He gave his life to save us, Layla. He gave us time. The only way we can honor his sacrifice is to see this through, to finish what he started." As they moved deeper into the woods, the crystal hanging from Serena's neck began to pulse with a warm, insistent light. They were getting closer. The forest grew denser, the trees so colossal, their branches intertwined high above, forming a living cathedral. Dappled sunlight filtered through leaves that had witnessed thousands of years pass. And there, at the very center, it stood, the first oak. It was a tree of impossible scale, so ancient and vast it felt like a gateway to another world. Its trunk, wider than a village square, soared hundreds of feet into the sky. A labyrinth of massive roots formed arches and hollows around its base, like the foundations of some forgotten natural palace. "It's beautiful," Layla whispered, her grief momentarily forgotten in the face of such raw, natural majesty. Serena nodded, her steps filled with reverence as she approached the ancient tree. With every footfall, the crystal's glow intensified, becoming almost too bright to look at. Naram said we had to place it in the hollow at the tree's center. They circled the enormous trunk until they found it, a perfectly symmetrical opening in the wood, seemingly carved by nature itself. Inside, a small alcove waited, etched with ancient symbols that mirrored the intricate patterns on Naram's skin. Serena lifted the crystal from her neck. The chain, as if knowing its journey was over, broke with a soft snap. She held the glowing stone toward the alcove, its emerald radiance illuminating the entire clearing. "Wait." The voice was rough, choked with pain but unmistakable. They whirled around to see Naram limping toward them. He was battered and his clothes were torn, but he was alive. "Naram!" Layla cried out, pure joy washing over her as she ran to embrace him, heedless of his injuries. "How did you survive?" Serena asked, a wave of relief so powerful it almost buckled her knees. "The forest protected its guardian," he answered simply, though his exhausted face told of the immense cost. "And Malik?" "Buried," Naram confirmed, "along with most of his followers. The few who survived have fled the Silverleaf." His gaze then settled on the crystal in Serena's hand. "You found the heart." "Yes." She held it out to him. "It's yours. It's time to restore it." Naram looked at the small green stone, cradling it in his palm with a gentle touch. "Not mine alone," he said, his voice gaining strength. "This belongs to all who would protect this forest, Sylvan and human alike." He looked from Layla to Serena, a new understanding dawning in his eyes. Together. Serena understood. She placed her hand over his, the crystal nestled between their palms. Layla joined them without a word, her small fingers closing the circle. As one, They reached forward and placed the heart crystal into its ancient resting place within the first oak. The moment it made contact, a phenomenal pulse of energy surged outward, a silent shockwave that rippled through the entire forest. The bark of the great tree seemed to flow like liquid, sealing the crystal within its core forever. Spirals of pure light raced up the massive trunk, leaping from branch to branch, connecting every tree until the whole of Silverleaf was woven together with threads of living energy. In that brilliant instant, Naram, Serena, and Layla shared a single, powerful vision. They saw the forest as it once was, vibrant and teeming with sylvan guardians living in perfect harmony with humans. They saw a world balanced by nature's rhythm. When the light finally faded, a fundamental change had settled over them. Naram stood taller, the wounds on his body healing before their very eyes. The ancient markings on his skin glowed with a renewed, vital energy. "The balance returns," he said, his voice filled with awe. "I can feel the forest awakening." "Does this mean other Sylvan might come back?" Layla asked, her voice trembling with hope. Naram knelt before her, his amber eyes soft and kind. "Perhaps not as they were before, but new guardians will arise." He gently touched the faint, leaf-like pattern on her wrist, which now glowed with the same soft light as his own markings. "Some may already walk among us." Tears of joy streamed down Serena's face as she watched them. "What happens now?" "Now," Naram said, rising to his feet and taking her hand in his. "Now, we build something new. A sanctuary, where the ancient wisdom of the Sylvan and the boundless compassion of humans like you and Layla can flourish together." In the days that followed, they made their home within the sheltering roots of the first oak. Word began to spread through nearby villages, tales of a witch of the woods who could heal any ailment, and a silent forest spirit who protected travelers who entered Silverleaf with respect in their hearts. Those who came with greed and malice found themselves lost, their paths mysteriously twisting until they fled in frustration. Seasons turned into years. Under their watchful care, the Silverleaf flourished, returning to a splendor not seen since before the Great Burning. Layla grew into a remarkable young woman, her sylvan heritage becoming more pronounced with each passing year. Flecks of amber appeared in her eyes, and faint, glowing patterns would trace themselves across her skin in the moonlight. Soon, other children with the old bloodlines began to find their way to the first oak, drawn by dreams of the forest and the crystal heart's subtle, beckoning call. Naram taught them the ancient ways of the Sylvan, while Serena shared the generations of knowledge her family had so carefully preserved. One evening, as the setting sun painted the ancient trees in shades of gold and fire, Naram and Serena stood together, watching Layla teach a group of younger children how to listen to the whispers of the saplings. "Ilara would be so proud," Serena said softly. "Her sacrifice. It didn't just preserve the crystal, it preserved hope." Naram's fingers intertwined with hers, his touch as gentle and certain as falling leaves. "She always believed our kinds could live as one. In Layla, and in all these children, I see her vision finally coming to life." "And in us?" Serena asked, turning to meet his gaze. The ancient guardian smiled, the centuries of loneliness finally melting away from his features. "In us," he said. "I see that love endures. It survives beyond hatred, beyond time itself. Like the forest, it can withstand fire and frost, only to grow anew, stronger than before." As twilight deepened, the heart crystal began to glow from within the first oak, a steady, peaceful beacon of renewal. Its light was a promise in a world where ancient enemies had found not just peace, but family. The Silverleaf whispered their story on the wind, a tale for all who would listen, a story of how the last guardian's heart, hardened by loss and solitude, was reawakened by a child's courage and a woman's unwavering faith. And in that awakening, both the forest and its guardian were born again. Thank you so much for joining us on this journey. If you enjoyed this story, please consider liking the video and subscribing to our channel for more tales from magical worlds. We'll see you next time.